I'm absolutely not blind to the criticisms that have occurred about Porcfest, and particularly the noise, the banning, and the nudity. While some of those questions can be asked, there are no answers that are going to be given in this presentation. This is a fact-finding presentation. Constance is the team leader for Independence Realty Group, and she's also the coordinator for next year's Porcfest 21. She has not had an opportunity to meet with this year's group of managers or administration for Porcfest 20. She's not here to answer a question whether or not, for example, that nudity is going to be banned next year at Porcfest. You can ask questions about it. You can tell her, you're free to ask questions and give her some evidence on issues and give some opinions, but please make sure that you're not just saying coming to some conclusion without some factual basis behind it. It's not going to help anybody at any time. I'm really more concerned about this question, and that is, if you look at the mission statement for the Free State Project, it says that we are attempting to achieve liberty in your lifetime. And it says Free Staters are neighborly, productive folks from all walks of life. This is the mission statement: from all walks of life, of all ages, creed, and colors, who are on a mission to prove that more liberty leads to more prosperity for everyone. Those in New Hampshire are reaping the benefits, at the moment are reaping the benefits, both in our freedoms and in our quality of life. But our ultimate goal is to set an example for the rest of the world. So my question to the people that have joined us is, did Porcfest 20 meet the goals of the mission statement for Free State Project? Does anybody want to speak on that? You're free to unmute yourself.
I will.
All right, Constance, go ahead.
I think it was a smashing success, considering the amount of handicaps we have every year going into this event that is so unique, and that it has.
Constance, I'm going to interrupt you for a second.
Sure.
Move your microphone closer to your mouth. You're breaking up.
Can you? Is that better? It might be my air conditioner. It might be. Okay.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
I can turn it down. I don't want to, but I can.
You don't have to if you just hold that
okay.
Close to your mouth.
So as somebody who's been going to Porcfest every year since 2013, I think that it was a smashing success. The number of different people that we had there, and the difficulties that we had to overcome with the campground, and with the doing it all by volunteers, and so many things that were controversial leading into Porcfest that took a lot of time to try to navigate. I think that overall the event was fabulous, and almost all the feedback that I got from the event was that people were very happy with it and excited to come back next year. So in that respect, I think it was a great, and then just like the difference between the rainbow gathering down the road that had, last I heard, there was already 70 dockets on the court for Lancaster, but compared to the one that we had, the one person who had to be arrested from Porcfest. Like, in my opinion, that's like, but also I have all the background. Like, I know all the steps that went on to make the event. So I will recognize that. That makes me like probably biased in that favor.
Again, if anybody has any comments, or you're free to unmute yourself and speak up. One of the other sad events of Porcfest, and I have it in my notes, and I hate to be gloomy at the beginning of this presentation, but we did have the passing of one of our very, very fine Free Staters. Balloon Man White passed away at Porcfest this year. I kind of had a special relationship with him in the sense that I hired him last year to be at my tent to make balloon animals every morning of Porcfest for children, it was a great turnout. Kids loved him. Kids loved his little balloon animals, and I've never seen anybody with that similar talent in making balloon animals in my life. He's going to be sadly missed in the Free State community.
Yeah, I agree with that. Was definitely, I think, the hardest part of the festival for me.
I'm just going to continue speaking about the events that we had this year at the Homeland Tent on purpose. We made sure that it wasn't 100% real estate related. I think that the purpose for IRG was a branding mission, so people would get to know Independence Realty Group, as the six of us had left Porcupine Real Estate earlier this year. And it was important for the members of our community that we come from to know and understand that they have a choice, and that we have the skills and the qualifications to lead Free Staters for the next 20 years. As I said, about 50% of our presentations were real estate. The balance of the time were spent on community events. We had some really decent presentations by in the education communities. We had several women's events, including I guess the time capsule got prepared to be opened in 20 years from now.
Yep.
And
10 years.
Or 10 years from now. And we had a game night. We had a karaoke night, and we offered that our facility to the community at no charge to anyone who asked for it. We had speakers, Republican and Libertarian candidates for president speak. And we really enjoyed having a mix of.
And we didn't have Maj. We should definitely mention that.
Yeah, and we didn't have Maj. That was an absolute real event. I got the call from his associate that he had been arrested just prior to making the trip to New Hampshire. The arrest took place live on the air with Tom Woods, in an interview with Tom Woods as he was walking down the streets of Philly. Evidently he doesn't have a concealed weapons permit. I spoke to the bail bondsman. The bail was a little bit, while I was considering putting up his bail just to get him to Porcfest. it was thwarted by the fact that he had to have two relatives come to the bail bonds office and sign the bail. And his mother was in Europe, and his uncle was available, but he didn't have another close enough relative to satisfy the bail bondsman to bail him out that night. And that is as real a story as you could imagine. Disappointing because he was scheduled to be there at professing the rights for urban individuals to possess and carry guns. So at the same time, RFK was speaking, and as we know, that was a gun-free zone.
Yeah, I think that was a disappointment, but we did get those spots filled with other speakers last minute. People that had posted in like Porcfest plans that they wanted a space. I reached out, or I saw people around the campground and offered them the space. So I wasn't able to attend many talks in the tent, but from what I could tell, there were a lot of very interesting ones that went very long, which is a problem when you're trying to keep a schedule.
So again, I'm offering an opportunity for you guys to give us your input on what you thought of Porcfest. If there's anybody, you can unmute yourself. I'm not keeping you off the line if there's somebody who wants to say anything.
Quentin, you're talking, but we can't hear you yet.
Who's that?
Quentin Lewis was I don't think, I don't know if he was talking to us because he just waved like, yeah, don't worry about it. So but I saw him all around at various events all week long and welcoming people into Porcfest plans. As soon as I put the welcome thing up, he'd make sure to welcome people. So thank you for that. Like it's definitely good to see how many people are willing to lend a hand throughout. Obviously I asked for feedback immediately after Porcfest for a reason, and Olga, who's here on the call, had a brilliant suggestion that we send out a survey to people so that way we don't miss folks who might not be using Telegram or Facebook or the various channels, so they can fill out what their thoughts are about Porcfest and what could be improved. So that will be going out shortly, and that'll definitely give us more information.
So one of the things about Porcfest that I was told before I attended my first Porcfest was that it was there to stimulate and encourage movers to come to New Hampshire. And I would like to hear from other people, but in my opinion, I would say that Porcfest this year did fulfill those goals merely because of the variety of views that were being presented at various locations and tents and hubs, and obviously in the pavilion. One of the initiatives that IRG is started at Porcfest is we're trying to recruit individuals to sign up for their class of. For example, I'm the class of 2020. For the people who are planning to come in 2024, 2025, 2026, we're trying to get them to join a group of individuals in their group. We'll set up various Facebook or Signal channels. I'm not a Facebook user, but definitely Signal or Telegram channels for them to stay in touch with movers. We figure that one of the things that will help is if they can assimilate with other people who are looking at moving in the near future, or in the future at all. It may encourage more movers into the state, growing our network of free staters.
Yeah, my first Porcfest in 2013, I actually camped next to folks who are on a similar timeline to move. And they're still in Manchester, still friends of mine. So they got here before me. They didn't have any kids, and moving with 4 kids was a little more tricky. And then they would, like, she would call me and tell me how great it was, and you know, really encourage me to finish the move, because I was stuck in Ohio for a little bit after I left Alaska, and you know, Ohio is a lot cheaper than New Hampshire, and things weren't going as well as I'd hoped with the move. And so you know, I was kind of bouncing around the idea of whether I should stay in Ohio longer, and having that buddy here in New Hampshire was really key, because she was a brand new mover as well. So she actually put my ex-husband and son up while we were finishing the move. So they came ahead of me to find housing. All my kids were 10 and under when I moved. And so finding a house for our apartment for 4 kids, you know, from Ohio, was not working out. So he came ahead, and they stayed in her apartment. So those types of like support network is really what Porcfest is about, and finding the people that are going to support you in your move. And it worked really well for me, and I've heard a lot of positive feedback from it. So that's why I wanted to have the class of get together that we did, and we did connect some people.
Yeah.
And we'd love to keep doing that. And along the line, is it wasn't a time that I think worked well for that particular event, but we learn every year, like, how to make things better. And one of the pieces of feedback that I'm getting a lot is that the schedule was overwhelming and needed tags, so you could sort the schedule and find the events that you wanted to attend in your interest. And so that's definitely something that we used to have. We used to use a scheduling app called Hoova, and you could sort by like kid events, adult only events, general public events, that type of thing. There were a lot less events back then too. So because like the idea of hubs being on the main schedule wasn't universal. It used to be the schedule was the FSP events, and then anyone who wanted to put up their own event like Alt Expo would have to advertise them separately. And then 1 year Alt Expo things were put on the main schedule, but there was certainly not the level of hubs that Dennis created. So the schedule was, I think, over 1,000 items, and that's a lot. I mean, especially when you're in a festival,
Right.
to try to sort through all that.
So this also brings up one other interesting aspect about the situation at Porcfest this year, and that is clearly there was a decentralization of activities. There were a lot more activities off the field than on the field, and at the pavilion. I don't know if that was good or bad. I know that I would like to have seen more people on the field, because we had a tent on the field at a great expense. And you know, I'd like, that's an area for input. I'd also like to throw one other thing out, since I have an audience, and every time I have an audience now, I like to bring up one other point, and that is, and you understand, as a real estate agent, we're the ones who get the call from people from out of state just before they get here. They want to know about regions, they want to know about housing and rentals, and they want to know about one more thing, and that is jobs. And right now we would have a lot more movers. We would have a lot more free staters getting here if we had some businesses that were hiring. We can only bring in X number of IT people who can work from home and keep the same job and then still qualify for a rental or financing a home. Or on the other side of that is the number of people that have moved here and are working for Sig Sauer. We need to encourage more employers, more companies, and if you're working for someone who has an office someplace else, if you're a remote worker, and they do have brick and mortar facilities, encourage them to come to New Hampshire. If I got a call from a company director or a CEO or CEO of a large company, I'm more than capable to discuss the concepts of not just real estate purchases, but enterprise zones, commercial property purchases, and the glut of workers that we have here in the state, and the fact that we can attract more great workers if they get here to New Hampshire. Tax situations, the tax, good tax breaks for the companies. And so if you work for somebody or know somebody who has a company that is a candidate to move to New Hampshire, who might employ some free staters, now is the time to talk to them.
Quentin, you're unmuted. Go for it.
No, I'm unmuted. I figured it out. That was a problem. I was trying to log into my PC. I couldn't do it from my phone. Anyways, here I am. I don't know what part of the state you're in, but there's no glut of workers where I am. There's actually, I mean, you want to talk about plenty of work, but it's hospitality work up here in the Mount Washington Valley. So, and in terms of connecting with people coming up, I've been to a couple of calling parties or whatever they're called. And at one of them 3 parties ago, I was signed up as a person to communicate with people who are interested in, I guess, Carroll County or wherever, this area. And so I checked that database or Google file, at Porcfest week, and I was still on it. And, there are other people on it, but I've never gotten a call. So I don't know if there's things that have, started that just haven't been followed through. I mean, I don't expect a lot of people to want to come to Northern New Hampshire or whatever I am, Lakes region, wherever, I don't even know. But you know what I mean? But I mean, there are plenty of initiatives that have started. I mean, like I said, I'm on that list. I've got my email address and my phone number, and I'm, not that I expect calls, but.
Yeah, I think that part of it is there's very little paid employment at the FSB. There's Chris Lopez, who is the out-of-state coordinator, and then there's Rebecca Robin, who is the in-state coordinator, and a number of other things that have been added to her duties. So there's little even IT positions that they try to hire people for. There hasn't been a consistent person. So a lot of things get started in a volunteer organization and then get stopped. And that's one of the reasons that I'm so key on running Porcfest next year, is because I've been volunteering as registration and working with different producers since 2017. So I have a lot of history, and I want to share that. And then Olga, who's here in the chat, is going to document things as we go as well, so that way the next person will have access to things, because even files that were created in like 17 and 18 when I worked with Jessica and Roger Paxton accidentally got deleted. So like having consistency in an all volunteer organization is difficult. So it might just be that you need to ping Rebecca and ask her, and if there's anybody who is reaching out for your region. And also I very much think that the number of movers, now that the COVID rush is over and the lack of inventory, is going to be really, really slowed down over the last couple of 2021, 22 were huge years for movers. But as life goes back to normal in the places that people were trying to escape from, they're going to remember, they're going to keep looking, but they're not going to be in the rush that a lot of people who moved in those years were to have a chance at a normal life. So, and I'm hopeful that a lot of folks who moved up from Mass because they thought they wanted to live in the middle of nowhere will realize they were wrong, and they'll leave, and we can replace those with Liberty folks, because it wasn't just libertarians that were moving in mass out of any of the cities during the COVID years.
Right. But right, and I'm not complaining. I thought what I was going to say earlier is Porcfest was great, and it was better than the other two that I'd gone to prior. But you know, but as you're trying to do here, you're trying to make it better, right? So
yeah. Oh yeah.
So one of my comments about, you know, I was one of the people that made a comment about the schedule. The schedule's great. There's a lot of stuff, and that's better than having nothing on the schedule. But I made the comment about searching, and I think a lot of people did too. But one of the things that wasn't well, I mean, so if you're going to have a tool that everybody can use to search, and there was some capability to do searching, but the people at the help desk, and I was one of them, we were not really well versed in that. And so, and in fact, our tool didn't do searching, right? Well, and so we couldn't even do the searching in the behalf of other people. And then if somebody needed to know, we weren't, unless we pulled out our own phone and did it. You know what I mean? Like, yep. If we're going to have a great search tool or app, I think it would behoove the help people to be trained on it or whatever, and then be able to train, you know, the people that come up and ask for help, show them, whatever, however, you know, it's all on their phone. I mean, I don't know what the right word is. And I'm not complaining. I'm just saying.
No, I'm not taking it as a complaint at all. It's great feedback. Right. And actually, please put that on the survey. We've actually started to discuss potential solutions. One of the biggest being that Porcfest no longer fits into the time slot that was given. So setting up the tents on Monday put us behind because people were already in the campground all set up and having events. So typically Monday was setup day, Tuesday started the actual Porcfest. Porcfest goes through Sunday morning and then it's tear down. But this year, getting there on Monday, like it already felt like Thursday. And so I've already been in touch with the tent rental company to see if we can set up the weekend before as a possible way to get the tents set up before the volunteers show up. So that way when the volunteers show up, they're not moving boxes around, but they're being debriefed on how the search or the schedule works. So there's been amazing feedback left, and we are definitely we're gonna implement a lot of things that either we wanted to implement this year and we just didn't have time, or we didn't know we needed, and so we fixed some other issues. Like we put lots and lots of effort into signage this year, and then kind of heard that nobody knows how the roads work, which the office of Rogers Campground used to point when they gave you your map. They used to tell you how the roads worked, but I think they're so overwhelmed because they're not used to having that many people on site that they were just kind of like, here's your sticker, go, assuming that a lot of people knew what they were doing. And then there was traffic jams, and it's not as safe for the kids if the cars are going the wrong direction. So yep, that's why I want the feedback, because I don't take it as I don't take it as a unnecessary criticism. Criticism itself is good. That's how we figure out what needs improved.
Well, I thought that once you did understand that there was a traffic pattern there, which wasn't really the best of marked, but it was marked, that the traffic pattern was really good. That was one of the positive aspects of this year's Porcfest, and also the sign, the markings of what sites were on each of the rows at the end of the row. I thought that worked out really well
Yeah,
I
and those used to be on the road. They were painted on the road, but over the
Yeah.
years they've worn off and never been replaced.
Yeah.
So,
But those worked out a lot better than the previous Porcfest. So yeah, moving around was a lot easier this year.
one of the favorite suggestions that I read was, instead of just doing like, these are the site numbers, is somebody putting a pull up, which actually allows like anybody who has a hub. So it would be like, here are site numbers 80 through 95, and then underneath would be like 91 is this person, and they put their own little sign up, which I thought would be cute. Kind of like,
Well, at IRG, we had hub identifiers, and that was another bit of disappointment. Our printer let us down. The signs, which were free to anybody who did have a hub, we had the signs to identify their hub number and who they were, and unfortunately they didn't arrive till Wednesday, I think.
no, they got there Monday, but I had to pay a lot extra for those ones.
Whatever it was, we didn't get enough of those out. So
Yeah.
next
Yeah.
year we want to get those hub markers out, which we have plenty left, I think.
Nope.
No,
Just a few. Just a few.
All right.
Yep. We did send people around with a cart to pass them out
Okay.
once we had people and signs. But yeah, the Monday signs were twice as expensive they should have been, because they said that everything would be delivered by the 16th to Rogers, and then they didn't even print them or tell me that they were not printing them. So that was a little bit of a last minute thing I had to deal with, because like, if I tell people they'll have free signs, I want them to have free signs.
That was compliments of IRG. That had nothing to do with Free State or the Porcfest people. That was something that we were trying to do at IRG to facilitate other hubs. Again, if anybody has any other comments, this is the time to speak up. If we don't.
I'll go unless someone else wants to go first.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, you asked about the Free State Project's goals at the start of the call. And I think the bigger question we need to ask is, what is the goal of our growth? And like I made the comment in an online chat, how when you run a startup, like, you want the builders, you want the rebels, you want all those people in the early stage, that guy that can do 10 different jobs. But when you're a little further down the road, that model starts to inhibit you in the growth phase, and you need to start running less like a startup and more like a mature company. So I don't want to make like this about what's been done or who broke rules or any of that kind of stuff, because what's been done up through this year might have been the right call for that time, and that's fine. But I think like now, today, we're out of that startup phase. Like, we have our people in office. We've had a ton of legislative wins. We've got our opposition freaking out. They talk about us all the time. It's great marketing for us. And now we're in this phase where we really need to focus on growing a base that's going to support that momentum. So like, for me, the question and what I want everyone to think about is whether having a space for nudity at our biggest event is a net positive or a net negative to that goal of attracting new movers. Because whether we like it or not, this is a wedge issue for probably the vast majority of parents. And we see over and over people say, oh, I'm not going to come to Porcfest. And we'll never hear from them in a feedback call like this, because they just disassociate and move on. And some people want to say that's fine, we don't need those people. But I think we're at the point where we got to move beyond only attracting builders and activists and start like really trying to recruit the kinds of people who are going to move here and put down roots here and vote for Free State candidates and run for office and take the public schools to task. And like, this is an easy win for us to get those people. Parents are pissed off right now about groomers in schools, and they will move to get away from them. And if we as an organization are okay with naked adults in front of kids, and this is how we present, New Hampshire is never going to be that place for them. So my question is, as an organization, do we see more value in attracting those families moving forward, or do we see more value in appeasing a handful of exhibitionists who don't even live here and want to be naked in front of them? Because like, I can tell you, I have 3 kids and 2 of mine are adults now, so this is less relevant to me personally. But if they were little and Porcfest was my first interaction with the FSP, like I can tell you right now, my wife would have said, these people are a bunch of degenerates and never been open to moving here. So when we
I
see
think-
people
I
like
think we-
Ian and Carlin,
I think we
like-
got the point of
Okay.
your statement. And honestly, like
well,
Jack said at the
I mean, I'm not
beginning,
finished yet because this is a really bad look for us when people like
Well,
Ian
Ron-
and Carlin are
Ron-
tweeting pictures of naked adults running around the campground where kids are.
Well,
So-
Ron, I'm going to challenge you. You're speaking in conclusions. You're not giving any specific facts, and I've heard this in the chat lines, and to equate these people as groomers is a conclusionary statement.
That's not my conclusion. This is other people's conclusion. And
Well,
I don't want
then-
people to be
then-
afraid
then
of
all it
coming
is
here
is-
because of this.
Then as a former lawyer, you're just repeating hearsay, Ron.
Right, I am. I'm speaking.
I
to
want
people who
evidence.
aren't here.
I want evidence.
I mean,
Now,
would you like
I
me to
am
send you a
not,
list of
I am
tweets
not
of people who
suggesting,
have said this.
I-
mean,
I
don't-
am
don't
not
challenge
suggesting-
me on the fact that this is happening.
Jack, will you please mute him? Because we've
Mhm.
asked him to stop. And
Ron, I'm just going to say this, that I'm not saying that I'm supporting Body Freedom Village. In fact, I probably don't. I like Jeff. He happens to be one of my clients, but I'm not positive that it belongs there either. But you cannot utilize these public forums without presenting actual evidence. And that's what's happening in the Telegram chats and the Signal chats. There's no evidence. I've not seen any evidence of any of this, any of the things that are being alleged actually occurring. Now, your statement with regard to, yes, we need to have we need to have a look at this is absolutely correct. And you're right. As a business person myself, and as a developer of innovative companies in the past, you do reach a time when you want to look at what you need to go to the next step. So we agree 100%, Ron, with what you're saying.
And that's fair. I mean, I'm not even complaining about what's happened because the rules were what they were. It was allowed. I mean, you want to say, some people want to say it's a violation, some disagree. I don't even care about that.
Yeah.
But I do think it's a bad look when some of these tweets are going around of photographs from the event. And I think we're at a point where we gotta like start attracting that next level of mover. And I want to make sure that's considered because every time it's been brought up, everyone's been very dismissive. In particular, Dennis and Carol.
Okay. I mean, I've had people say that
Dennis
they
is
wanna
not
move
the
to-
organizer for next year. Dennis is done with the
Yeah.
organization. He's
But
going to be there, and he's entitled to his opinion just as anyone else
Yeah.
is entitled to their opinion. But as we said at the beginning, we haven't even had a chance
to debrief.
to debrief. That happens this weekend. And I've definitely seen a lot of complaints, but what I've mostly seen is people just saying the same thing over and over and not even acknowledging the fact that I said we can review the rules for 24. So it seems like a complete waste of time for me to even acknowledge your point if my point of the rules will be reviewed is not being acknowledged.
Yeah.
And as far as the FSP's overall mission, that is not mine to direct. My direction from the FSP board is to run Porcfest. So if they have a completely different idea of how it should be run than the previous 11 that I've attended, it certainly hasn't been communicated to me, and you're welcome to ask the board or talk to the people that actually would direct the mission. But until I hear from them, I'm going to assume that they want me to run a big tent libertarian festival that attracts Liberty families.
Right, and that's what I want too. I just want to make sure we're not excluding those families
Yeah, no,
by
believe
including the fringe.
we're absolutely on the same wavelength, 100%.
I don't know. I mean, you and Jack might be on the same wavelength, but I am fringe, so I'm not conservative. I am personally not seeing the pushback. Again, I don't particularly like the idea of calling somebody who chooses to be nude a groomer. And if somebody can logically follow that conclusion, that maybe they aren't right for New Hampshire. So maybe we need more space. We have a limited amount of housing. We have a little limited amount of space at Porcfest. Maybe we need the families that are like, oh, don't go to that corner. Those people party different, or those people express liberty different than we do. Stay in this corner. We don't know. These are just speculations, but like I said, nothing's been decided. But I don't want to and just some of the things I read that the families have more value. Well, the families have dependents that single folks don't have. They have resources and time. I mean, Carla has no kids and she does all these hours of volunteer work. Chris Lopez doesn't have kids. Obviously she's got a paid position, but even before she had that, she was here as a mover. I really don't want to think that we're going to discriminate against people that are childless and say that they are not as good a mover as a person with children, because the only way you can guarantee children grow up to be libertarians is to indoctrinate them, groom them. Like, like kids frequently grow up with very different ideas than their parents. So it's not even a guarantee we'll have more libertarians by bringing in children. So that's me personally. That's not IRG. That's not Porcfest producer. These are my views.
Okay. Karen has a question. Unmute yourself, Karen.
Hey, thanks, Jack. I hope my internet connection's stable enough that you can hear me fine.
Perfect.
I saw a lot of really open and irresponsible drug-related behavior at Porcfest, and that disturbed me a lot more in terms of that being in front of children. As somebody who participates in some of the nudist activities, I've talked to a lot of families, parents who did not participate in the nudist activities, but have expressed support for Porcfest being a place where different communities are expressing themselves in different ways. I think that this issue is worth discussing. I think there are vocal people on both sides of the issue that may be getting in the way of an actually productive conversation. And Ron, I think that there are certain aspects of what you're saying that I agree with, including the growth part of your statements. I think there's room to talk about where we go from here and what that might look like. I do object to some of the language you're using around groomers, because there's a lot of us who actually are family oriented and also nudists. So it's not just a bunch of depraved people running around wanting to exhibit themselves and, play helicopter with their weenie, as someone very hilariously put. I think it's an important issue, and hopefully we can find a way to have a constructive conversation about it, so we can have a successful, all have a successful time next year. So there's so many links there that I feel a little bit like I can't read them all right.
Yeah, the spacing didn't work out. They were separate tweets, but like I hear what you're saying. I've known nudists. I lived in Florida where there were a lot of nudist communities. And I think the difference between those and like what we see at Porcfest is they weren't out and about where there were little kids running around. They were in their communities, they were doing their thing, didn't bother anybody, but they never go to the neighborhood barbecue and say, oh, hey, can I take off my clothes here? So we're seeing people, and the reason I call them exhibitionists and not nudists is because they're not just doing their nudity thing in the area we designated for them, they're branching out. And I think that's the bigger problem than like, we created a boundary and they didn't respect that boundary.
I just want to say something. I'm a parent and I, have 3 kids, and I want to say that these concerns are valid concerns, and they should be recognized, that parents are grappling with how to reconcile all the different freedoms that Porcfest represents to kids of different ages, how to explain things that they may have not been prepared for, how to be prepared for things parents themselves may not be prepared for necessarily, right? And I think just from my perspective, I want to hear everybody's feedback about it. And this is why I feel really strongly about providing a comprehensive survey where people can voice those concerns so we can start moving forward on a fact-based issue log, rather than to hear very loud voices on either sides of the camp drowning each other out and insulting each other, driving a further wedge into the community. So I love this community. I care about it a lot. I want it to do well. But like I said, it is also a topic for me, and it's personal for me for various reasons, this Porcfest. And so, I'm going to do my part in trying to assess and have a discussion about it that is productive. Because what I want to see is, an event that attracts movers, but also movers that are doers, movers that can find ways to compromise and figure out a solution, people that are solution oriented rather than reactionary. Yeah. So I'm absolutely hear the concern, and it is valid. And I understand why folks that do ascribe to that lifestyle would also want a space for themselves. I do see that. And I think we need to take a look at everything, take a look at what people give us feedback on, and act accordingly. And I think everybody here is, a smart person that is receptive to actual feedback.
Yeah. So what what I'm hearing is, and this I say I agree with, that we are suffering from some growing pains, and I think that we have to define whether or not Porcfest is a celebration, or are we getting to a point where it's corporate, or is it a situation where we're now recognized as a group that is here to, if you were a Granite Stater, you would say that we're controlling this to control the state, or and that we want to pass only laws that we agree with, and eliminate regulations, and certainly eliminate any taxation. So
it's not, FSP doesn't have membership. It's not a party.
No, that's
and
correct.
I want to specify that, because I think it's, as we have this discussion, we can talk about running it in a more organized corporate way and doing some things differently. But ultimately, it's not membership. So I just wanted to specify that.
Yes, it absolutely, it's not membership, and that, in my view, leads to a part of its disorganization, by the way, and that
volunteers.
That is they've taken a list of 20,000 names, and that is part of their mission, is to get 20,000 people here. And because they were not professional in contacting those people, volunteers didn't handle it correctly, we wound up with 56 or 6,500, depending on who you talk to. And if it had been handled by some professionals, we might have hit 20,000 by now. Now there's a lot of those names are worthless, and they're in a dead letter file at Free State Project now. So I would love to have had that list as a professional marketeer, but they won't give it to me.
Which is off topic from Porcfest. So now
That's
we're going to move off
topic.
from that one.
Yeah.
Because yeah, a lot of things are volunteer, and volunteers come and go, and a lot of volunteers have come and go on you know, I mean, we lost a lot of people during COVID because they thought we were being reckless and endangering people. And, you know, there's always going to be different ways of expressing our freedoms. And I hope that next year's Porcfest will be even better than this year's, which was without a doubt our largest inside the campground. So we've sold out tickets before, and we've sold out the campground before, but I think that we had more people on site because, like most herding cats events, not everybody who buys a ticket shows up, and some people were buying on speculation previous years, hoping to resell. But just based on our check-in amount and talking to Rogers, I think we had a very, very cool campground, especially Thursday when RFK was there, and I mean, the amount of people in line for RFK was probably more people than we had on site for the entire week for 2020. So huge growing pains that that facility wise that will be handled if we continue to grow like this. So I just want to say that in the end, even though, you know, I mean, I never expect to solve questions that libertarians have been like debating for eons, like what's an adult, what's a child, like I'm not looking to solve those questions, but I am trying to like we said, have a place for a conversation, and those places will be coming as we have more organization towards Porcfest in 24.
Yeah,
I think
Constance,
somebody mentioned the term cultural courtesy, and I actually enjoy that term because it really goes both ways, right? It goes in both directions, and I think there's more discussion to be had around this as to how encourage that, and that goes towards families as well.
Agreed.
I just
Okay.
want to say,
Go ahead.
I just want to say it's called the Freedom Festival, the Porcupine Freedom Festival or whatever, right? It's a festival. It's a celebration. I mean, you know, I'm not saying that, I guess what I'm saying is I don't see it as a business lunch, right? It is, you know, it's the place where it's the place where we're supposed to show the world how a bunch of people that don't even agree with each other on most anything can get together and, you know, and deal with each other in a respectful and civilized way. And the only thing I can say in feedback, I think sometimes we don't think sometimes in terms of the personal responsibility as much as the freedom, you know, some of the people there. But that's my qualm. In terms of whether I expect to see things that I've never done before in my life, I absolutely do. You know what I mean? Do I like some of those? No, I don't. You know, but I guess, you know, my point is it is a festival. It's a celebration, and it's everybody there should think in those terms of like, we're here to get along with each other and show the world how it can be. And so
yeah, cultural courtesy.
Absolutely. So anyway, so, you know, I don't see it as a stepping stone to getting the 21,000th person here. I mean, yes, maybe we should think more about the movers. We probably don't do enough of that, like to help them at the festival itself, but that's probably true. But yeah, but anyways,
I actually think it is exactly what attracts the movers and the doers in its current, because the people that have never fit in where they're from show up and they suddenly find a bunch of people like them that aren't telling them they're crazy for believing freedom and personal responsibility. So those are the folks that end up moving after Porcfest. And most people that move to New Hampshire never go to Porcfest. I've been a realtor in New Hampshire since 2015. And often I'm selling somebody a house and they're like not even interested in going to Porcfest. It's a camping thing. Most people don't want to camp. Like it's in the middle of the White Mountains. You know, they hear that they might have to bring their own water in. Like these are not our just average people going to Porcfest. These are the people that really want to make they really want to experience Porcfest. And most of the, like I said earlier, most of the feedback I got was like, it was great. I'll see you next year, like from out of staters. So we can't separate the fact that the Free State Project is about moving Liberty people to New Hampshire. That is the point of the organization, is to get more movers, get them connected, get them plugged in, make their lives and their transition to New Hampshire easier. And the people that live in New Hampshire that are coming for the festival part of it, I hope that they keep that mission in mind where they're there and see how they can facilitate these people that are showing up for the first time, feeling comfortable, feeling welcomed, given, you know, knowledge that you have or things that overwhelmed you the first year, so that you can make it easier on those folks and start building the community that we're so famous for in New Hampshire.
I mean,
I have a couple of things. I didn't know if now was a good time to throw them out there. But first I'd like to say, thank you guys so much, because Porcfest only happens because of a lot of volunteers who dedicate a lot of time and effort to it. And I say it must be like planning a wedding every single year. And so, with that kind of in mind, I think probably one of the big perennial issues is the lack of showers and lack of water and the kind of closing of the bathrooms. Because, it's I kind of see it as a sanitary issue, where if you have to go to the bathroom or you're walking all the way up to take a shower and they're closed, it's kind of a big issue. And I know we
100%.
kind of overwhelm the site, but I feel like we need to work more with Rogers. I think the guy is getting kind of old and doesn't want to put money into the infrastructure of it to say, hey, we're paying for this, we should get it. If we're paying for a week of everything in the facilities, including showers and that stuff. Oh, and the pool wasn't filled this year, which was a big bummer. And stuff happens, but just stuff like that you kind of anticipate on having, that you get there and you don't have.
Yeah, the pool was not being filled, just FYI, while we were out of water. I've posted that a few times, that he's waiting on clear weather. It's been really rainy, and the repair person to fix the steps, and then he'll refill the pool. But it never happened before Porcfest. So I made a direct request that if the pool will be closed next year, we hear about it ahead of time, not when we get there, so that people can be prepared. We can adjust the schedule. We won't have a pool party on a schedule that has no pool. And as far as the facilities, yes, that is without a doubt, I think, the absolute biggest issue we have, and one of the hardest to solve, because there are not alternative sites that have ever been located that we can use. And that doesn't mean we're not exploring options, but it just means at this point, we don't have any answers, because again, I've never seen the facilities so bad as that year, as this last year. And have we outgrown the facility? Probably. Is there another option? Probably not. So what do we do? Like, those are discussions that we're having. But yeah, thank you for saying that, because that is actually the feedback I've heard the most, is that the facilities were not good for the families. And
it is a almost, I want to say, a good problem to have when you're having growing pains, because you're growing. And I think we've outgrown Rogers. And I try to not complain about something without at least having a solution. So I did go and look at other campsites, and the only ones that are bigger than Rogers have a lot of seasonal, so the actual spaces are much smaller. But I even thought about the pavilion down in Laconia that has a big they have like an 8,000 person venue. But their camping is kind of not up to par. It's kind of rustic. So I've kind of looked into that, and I would suggest, there are, they used to do this. I don't know if they still did, but for like $100, you could have the fire department come and fill your swimming pool, right? So what about talking with Rogers and say, hey, we either need to ship in water and see if the fire department will come if they have a water source, and they could come and do a thing like once a day and refill their tank there. And that would at least give us more water.
So the one thing I would say is if you read the pinned post in Porcfest plans on the facilities, Tim did a really good job of breaking down why we can't just fill the water tanks. That doesn't mean we're not exploring how to get water on site and the cost benefit analysis, but it has been looked at least, well, Tim used to do facilities in 2015 to 19, I think, and then came back this year. So he's got a lot of knowledge of the problems of Rogers Campground, and he looked into many things, and he is sharing everyone's frustration with the way that the campground has been maintained since he's been away for a couple of years. But we can't just bring water in and fill up those because there's like water tests and such. So we could possibly bring a water tank in for people to fill their buckets and go flush their own toilets in their RVs, but that doesn't help the folks like when the porta potties are full. So we've already got like emails out asking if we can get more porta potties. So we hear the concerns, and we will be working on them, but it's not like I mean, everybody is frustrated about lack of water because it is not sanitary, and I definitely hear you. And we also have the unique prospect of we can't just pick another town without knowing how they will react to certain ones of our hubs who have things that are not necessarily openly advertised at other events, and how are they going to react to those things. So we have a really good working relationship with the town, who I talked to both the chief of police and the chief of fire, who had positive things to say about how well we have take care of our own, which is exactly what we're after. We're after showing that we don't need the outside sources to take care of our own. We can do it.
Okay, so on that, there's been a lot of talk about maybe we need to have security at the gate. And this is something, again, don't complain unless you have a solution. I could probably come up with a few guys who would be willing to come up and do security.
Definitely talk to me, because I don't think a gate check will do more than security theater. But our rangers and their new location, we're also supposed to have an outpost at the registration location, and they just didn't have enough people. So what we were thinking of, instead of splitting rangers, is maybe we do like a community watch and let you and your friends hang out at that place where they can keep an eye on the gate, and and just be there and be the presence in the campground. So please, I put the volunteer form in earlier. Feel free to fill it out. We actually, to touch on Jack's earlier thing, although I do have to go soon, about the banning, some of the people didn't approve of some of the banning, so we lost a lot of people that had previously rangered. They just wouldn't enforce the bans, so they decided to step down. I told them ahead of time, knowing that one of the people that was banned was friends with other people here in Manchester. I didn't want to like put them in an awkward position where I say, oh, this person's not allowed to be here, please remove them, and they say no. It was just easier for them to step down ahead of time. So we were short rangers. But also the people sneaking in live in Lancaster, right? So they know the trips through, they know the way through the woods. I'm almost positive that the reason that cash boxes disappear is because they walk in the woods, they walk through the campground, they grab a cash box, they go back to the woods, they take the cash, they drop the box, and they go back to town. And a gate check isn't going to solve that issue. We're going to have to, lock up things or have more eyes on things.
If the rangers are non-confrontational, are you open to an outside security agency? They don't have to be uniformed or anything like that, but something that separates the organizers from the enforcement.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to make it sound like they're non-confrontational. The Rangers that stayed on were excellent at de-escalation and removal of people when it became obvious they needed to be. It was just that we were starting the week with less people. So if you, I mean, and I know like even the 23 rules were not enforced, partially because we didn't get reports, but also because, you know, well, mostly because we didn't get reports of issues until after the fact. It's always kind of amazing to me how many issues you hear once you can't do anything about them in the moment, because in the moment, had I known that people were on the roads naked, I would have first made sure they understood the rules. If they were caught again, I would have, you know, asked them to leave, because we already had this discussion last year. We don't want to keep having hours and hours. So we made a rule, but did everybody know the rule? I don't know. It doesn't sound like a lot of things get read, even when we put them out ahead of time. So then the first step is to assume they don't know the rule and ask them to comply. And then if they don't comply, then we know they're just willfully breaking the rule, and we ask the Rangers, we ask them to leave, and if they don't, then we ask the Rangers to step in. But
You know, I would say like even doing an event like, so you want to be a pork ranger or something at Porcfest to try to see if you could get people there who would volunteer, and you could go through de-escalation training and things like that and see if you could rope people in right there.
it's already on our to-do list.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
One of the
already-
things I feel really strongly is that every volunteer that has a substantial role is trained in de-escalation and some of the security training. I think it's absolutely vital for everybody.
Yeah, we already debriefed with the lead ranger and the lead pre-aid person because their availability was less, and that was one of the things that, like, how do you get a bunch of volunteers to have shared knowledge when they come on shift at different times during the week? So we're working on that issue as well. Possibly it'll be like, you know, the fast food solution where you watch a 15-minute video and then you have a conversation with somebody, just so we know you've been given the same information, because it is really, really important to me, and I think everybody who is an organizer at Porcfest, that our Rangers are seen as that, as a help and as de-escalation, and not as, you know, the roaming band of thugs who we have to deal with once we leave the Rogers campground property.
and well, also the Venn diagram of this, I'm also a software engineer. I started a group called Freedom Coders. And I think having a Porcfest app that not only is your place for your schedule, but also where you could call the Pork Rangers directly from it. And you could even have somebody like off-site where it's like, oh, here's a video of this guy doing this, or here's, so rather than having a description of somebody, you could take a picture, send it to the Pork Rangers, and then they kind of know what's going on when they get dispatched there.
That sounds really awesome, and I would
Yeah.
bow down if someone would please just
Well,
do that.
I put this somewhere, and again, this is why we want all the feedback in writing, because I do need to take a little time off, like after this, like, and get back to being a realtor instead of just a full-time volunteer for the FSP. So and a mom, like that was my kid that just came in. So but we had one person who once made an app that, like, every single site at Rogers was clickable. So as you announced that was your site, it would update. But then there was a falling out with them, and they took their app and went home. So so I would love that kind of app. And then we did have the numbers this year on 30 signs throughout the campground that you could text or call the Rangers or Free Aid immediately. So you weren't relying on radios like previous years. So I thought that was a huge upgrade. We've had positive feedback about that.
And the bracelets.
The
bracelet.
bracelets had that as well.
Yeah, they have the
Um,
number.
While we have so many families members on the line here, I want to mention my stepson's book. It is November Comes Around. It's on Amazon. It's written by a libertarian with a libertarian message to young children. And if you would also write a review to help us with our marketing of November comes around. It's based on for an age group of around 9 years to about 13, 14 years old. And I'm sure you'll enjoy the story. Has a great libertarian ending. Constance, is if that's all, we can sign off. If there's anything else that we haven't covered.
Somebody asked if you'd share the link.
Yes.
No, I think we touched on a lot of the things. Like, I think people will get a more of an understanding of what my job is for next year and how there's a lot of things that need to be improved on and how much I want everyone's help. And I appreciate you coming and hearing about this. And I wish we could have, you know, a lot longer of a discussion and hear more people feedback. One of the things that happened, I think, in Porcfest in 2016 is we had a volunteers meeting right away. So anybody who had an idea could come and share like what they thought they'd like to work on. So not just the management team, but like, which is also all volunteers, but people that like Brandon with your idea for an app. Like, so I think in August, we're gonna try to do something here in Manchester. So anybody who like in state and wants to participate in making this festival more awesome is welcome to come and showcase your personal passion and your way of doing liberty and find your tribe. So that's what I got. And thank you again for coming. The link.
Thanks to everybody. And we appreciate your attention, and we're always open for questions and comments in the future.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you all.